Right. So once I enter a particular chat room, as a user, I need to join the chat room. And the way that is achieved is that this page, just like the previous page, will create a WebSockets connection to the Node app at the backend and is going to use its own channel, that is going to use its own namespace, just like we did in the chat rooms page. And socket.io allows us to partition the connection so that you can simulate what looks like a room. What that means is that all users connected to this particular partition, with the name of the chat room as World Cuisine, for instance, can privately talk about the subject. And the way we will do that is just like in the previous page, we're going to create a WebSockets connection. So before we do that, I just need to call in jQuery. Not that jQuery is required for socket.io or Node.js. It's just that we are using jQuery for handling events such as the click handlers, etc. So that will be // code.jquery.com/jquery -1.11.0.min.js. Next up, I would include the socket.io. So that will be /socket.io /socket.io, another /socket.io.js. Now we'll create a script tag, and let's start by creating a variable called host, and this will be set to config.host. This would be required later. And we are going to create a connection using io.connect, and we will use host plus the namespace messages. Okay. So in the previous video, you saw the use of these namespaces, and we're going to use them again on this page as well. Now let's also set some variables which we would need later. And finally the user pick. Alright, so these would be required a little later. For now, what we need to do is, since the variable messages represents the connection over the WebSockets using the io.connect method that we have used, we will call on the event handler, and we're looking for the event called connect. So as soon as this page connects back and is able to create a WebSockets connection, so let's just do a console.log and say connection established. Okay, so just like how we did earlier, this would be used just for purely for testing purposes. Now we'll go into the socket.js and let's try and create a handler for the messages namespace. So we'll say var messages is equal to io of messages, and we are looking for the connection event to happen, in which case we'll have a function wherein we'll pass in a reference to the socket, and for now we'll just say console.log connected to the chat room. Okay, let's restart the app, and I'm just going to obviously log out, log back in. Let's create one chat room. we'll go into the chat room, and if you go into the console, we should actually see a connection established. So it says here messages is not defined. Let me just go back on the page. Oh, there's a small typo. So this should be message. This should actually be messages here. So we'll just say messages, and we will refresh the page, and it says here connection established. Never mind these two errors. It says connection established, and if you look on the terminal, it says connected to the chat room. So now you can see that we are actually able to establish a WebSockets connection, and we are using the namespace messages. So once this is established, the next thing that we need to do is we need to emit an event called join room. So we want to actually join a room, and Socket.io, as I explained earlier, allows you to actually partition a private room. So all users connected to a particular room can chat privately without disturbing users in the other partitions. So we will use the join room event, and I'm going to pass in the room number. We will partition the rooms by the room numbers, and we will also pass in the username, and we will also pass in the user pick, which will be like so. Back in the socket.js, what we'll do is we will create an event handler by saying socket.on, which is looking for an event called join room. And what this does is it takes in this data and it creates socket-wide variables. So we'll have a socket-wide variable called username, which is set to data.user, and this data.user is extracted from the message which we emitted, the event that we created here, and we had passed in three variables, three keys: room, user, and the user pick. So this is the first variable. Then we'll have socket.userPick, and I'll set it like this, to data.userPick. Let me just see if I've spelled everything correctly. And then finally, what we'll do is we'll say socket.join, and we'll get data.room. So data.room is the unique number of that room, and by doing a socket.join, we will allow the active user to join that particular partition so that he can chat with other users who are also joined in to this particular partition. Right, so what we've done is we have established a connection over WebSockets, and the moment we connect back to our Node app, what we're doing is we are emitting an event called join room, and we are passing in the unique number of the room, we are passing in the user name, and we are passing in the user pick as well. And this data is then captured back in the socket.js, and we are using the socket.join method to push this user into this partition. So this way we are able to segregate users into their individual partitioned and private rooms. In the next video, what we are going to do is we are going to create the actual chat functionality where I can type in a message and press enter, and the message then gets broadcast over WebSockets to other users in that particular room, and allows other users to do the same. So let's just quickly refresh this app. I'll just restart, and we will refresh here. Let's close the console, log in with Facebook. Let's create a new room title called Node.js. Let's click here, and we are in the room.